Pandemic business loans. I recently started to see a trend of small, long-established businesses deciding to close. Businesses that have been around since the 1960s or many even earlier than that. These businesses seem to be rock solid and withstood the test of time. Many of these took out loans during the pandemic. A local restaurant just closed and I asked the owner why he closed now and not during the pandemic. He said that he was able to continue operating throughout the pandemic because of the small business pandemic loans. However, he said that he never developed a long-term plan to pay back the loans because he said he was planning on going out of business anyway. I asked him, is the bank going to try to collect from you? He replied, this business has been around for so long that it relies on its own credit and no individual is linked to this business for credit purposes. The malicious compliance was that the government encouraged businesses to take out loans. So this restaurant did and used it as a life raft for a 3-year plan to shut down with no intention of paying back. The restaurant owner told me he followed the rules of the loan program exactly and everything he did was legal. Edit. Somewhat related and unrelated tangent. I don't know much about business, but number of these responses made me think of Walt Disney. He was miraculous at following the letter of the law to his benefit. Walt Disney had a number of failed companies before he struck it rich. I wonder how many bankruptcies and defaults his companies had that he walked away from before he finally struck it rich. If the loans were Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, loans, so long as they kept most staff, the loan gets forgiven with no payback required. So either the owners were creeps who saw a chance to close after scamming, or chose not to honor the purpose of the loans, which was to keep people employed. This isn't malicious compliance. It's fraud. Malicious compliance is when you follow someone's stupid rules and it bites them in the butt. This guy didn't even follow the rules and benefited himself. Since when being a roach and defrauding the state is malicious compliance? Did he at least get them forgiven? If not, the bank that gave him the loan is on the hook for the money. I believe there's paperwork involved by the borrower to get that done. So, legal, but not really ethical. My wife and I run a small business. And when the PPP loan program started, we attempted to get loans from the large bank we do business with, WF. But they had exhausted their funds within days. Probably to huge corporations. My wife, being the smarty that she is, decided to call up the tiny bank in Iowa that handles the HSA health savings account that is attached to our health insurance. The nice lady there was happy to set up a business account for us and approve a nice PPP loan that kept us going. The first one was forgiven, and we got another one in the second round, which was also forgiven. All told, about $30,000. And it really helped. There is zero malicious compliance here. Most PPP loans were forgiven with no payback required, as long as it served its purpose of keeping people employed during the pandemic, which it sounds like it did. I don't see an issue. Question is, did he just start a new company to take over the old one with just the name change? I don't believe you. But anyway, yes, own reason to incorporate, even if you employ literally only yourself, is to insulate individuals from risk. The business can go bankrupt while the humans are protected. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is somewhat subjective. But we can all go crazy at forgiving poor college students $10,000 while multiple members of Congress took out PPP loans for hundreds of thousands of dollars that are now forgiven and nobody said anything. Yeah, he's not telling you everything. I helped process those loans and help process forgiveness. He didn't do something right. Should have joined Congress so it would be forgiven for free. I personally know a local business that got millions of PPP loans that fired most of their staff and pocketed the money. Their bookkeeper was so upset that they quit in response. A lot of the comments are discussing PPP loans, but are we sure that it was one of those? It's almost like the odds are tipped towards limited business and not the worker. Weird that. Wow, just wow. Dizzy face. Different countries have different laws, but surely this is fraud. Or at the very least screwing people out of some cash that could have been used elsewhere. The loan came from the government, but that still originated from the pockets of citizens. My company got around 1.3 meters. The first check I was asked to write when the first PPP check arrived was for about $300K to pay on my boss's mortgage on his second home. All PPP loans were forgiven. The trick to legal forgiveness was that we didn't lose much business, so we still had normal payroll and rent expenses to submit for the forgiveness applications. The PPP money was ultimately just free money. And no individual is linked to this business for credit purposes. No bank is going to give loans without some kind of guarantee of repayment. And they will absolutely make sure someone is on the hook. And for a small business, that's going to be the owner, founder ultimately. Someone doesn't know what they are talking about. Remember that these are the same whiners that will also complain about the government forgiving $10K worth of student loans. He replied, this business has been around for so long that it relies on its own credit and no individual is linked to this business for credit purposes. Yeah, that's not how it works. If it's a sole proprietorship or partnership, then the debts of the business belong to the owner. It doesn't matter how long they've been in business. They can close that business, but they'll still be obligated to pay those debts. Only a personal bankruptcy would eliminate those debts. If it's a corporation or an LLC, then the business is an entity separate from the people who run it. The business can own property and have debts. A corporation can't just dissolve if it has debts. It can do a voluntary liquidation, which means selling off its assets in order to pay off its debts. If it doesn't have sufficient assets, then an administrative dissolution, such as Chapter 7 bankruptcy, is usually the only other option. Again, it has nothing to do with how long the business has been in operation. It has to do with the legal identity of the business. For a sole proprietorship or partnership, the legal identity of the business is simply another name for the owner. They are the same entity. For an LLC or corporation, the business is a separate entity with clearly defined rules about how it can cease to exist and how it must attempt to meet its obligations before doing so. Executives of the company are legally obligated to continue serving on behalf of the company until the dissolution is completed. However, executives are usually not required to give up personal assets to satisfy the debts of the company, unless it is determined that they may have acquired personal assets through the company prior to dissolution as an attempt to defraud.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.